Wisconsin is going back to work.
This is a special edition of Rewind, Wisconsinized discussion. We're all about the election today. We're in the state senate parlor. This is a conference table where the conference committee was approved for Act 10. I want to thank my co-host J.R. Ross, but I want to thank our two special guests. Former Governor Tommy G. Thompson, four-term, former Assembly Speaker Tom Loftus. Gentlemen, welcome. Thanks so much for participating.
Well, thank you very much for having us. You know, it's pretty unusual to have Speaker Loftus and Tommy Thompson invited to anything anymore. So, you know, we're delighted to be here.
Well, we didn't have anything to do, and now we had this filled up this hour.
Well, I looked it up. You two won 22 elections. Then you went on to be Cabinet Secretary, U.S. Health and Human Services. You went to Ambassador to Norway, 93 through 97. So we're very glad you're here. There was an election yesterday. First question, Governor, do you remember January of 2011, you and I talked outside the Assembly chamber, and I asked you what advice you had given Scott Walker. You said, be bold, 2 words. Is that still your advice as he begins his second term in January, sir?
Absolutely. When you run for governor and you have the privilege to be elected and to serve this wonderful state, you only have 4 years. You don't know what's going to happen, you know, after that. And so you really got 4 years to really do something good or something that you think is good for the state of Wisconsin. And being timid, being mediocre, being lackadaisical just doesn't cut it. You have to be bold. You have to set your agenda and you have to be involved. And that's my advice 4 years ago, and it's even more important today because the people yesterday, it was a tremendous Republican victory, one of the biggest I've ever been involved in. I only wish it would have happened 2 years ago. I would have been in the United States Senate. But it happened yesterday. And people's response, and I really believe it's coming through loud and clear, govern, be bold, get things done. That's what people want.
Quick follow-up before I ask a question of Speaker Loftus. You traveled with the governor last week. You were in Hudson, et cetera.
Right.
What should he be bold with? What should be his Act 2 in his second term, Governor?
Well, number one.
What issue?
Number one is the economy. You know, he made a commitment 4 years ago, and he said Tommy Thompson did it, and that was to create 250,000 jobs. He's got to fulfill that pledge. He said, this is a continuation. I'm going to go back and make sure I get the 250,000 jobs. That's still out there. People are still putting that out there. He's got to get that done. He's got to fix the transportation fund. You know, the highways in Wisconsin really are important for economic development, especially for tourism, and being able to get our crops to market from the farming community. So he's got to take care of that. And education, as always, no matter what happens, education is a constant for state legislators and the governor. You got to make sure your K through 12 is taken care of. We got to continue to be able to find ways to fund it, and the university system has got to be taken care of, and we got to make sure that young people, once they graduate from our universities, stay in Wisconsin and have a job. Those 3 things are absolutely important for this governor.
Can I ask you a follow-up, Governor? So it looks like in presidential years we're a bluer shade of purple, in midterms we're a redder shade of purple. There's a fear of some Republicans with big majorities now in both houses and Governor Walker in the executive branch, if they go too far right, then you start to crater the brand, and there might be a whiplash, if you will, especially in like a year like 16, we should be more blue. Do you think there's any danger in them going too far and what they might do be too conservative?
There's always in danger. You know, no matter if you're a Democrat going too far left or you're a Republican going too far right, it's a danger. People in Wisconsin are pretty much in the middle. You know, it goes back and forth in the state of Wisconsin. They want good government. They want people to solve their problems and get this state moving. Get a good education, have a job, and be able to live the good life in the state of Wisconsin. It's not rocket science, but you have to be bold and you have to come up with programs to get it done. And that's why being real radical to one side really just doesn't cut it in the state of Wisconsin.
Speaker Loftus, thanks for your patience. Give us your assessment of the state of Wisconsin Democratic Party in light of the losses yesterday. Loss for governor, loss for attorney general, loss of potentially 3 seats in the Assembly, loss of 1 in the state Senate. And How healthy is Wisconsin Democratic Party, sir?
Well, Mary Burke turned out to be a very good candidate, the best the Democrats could have hoped for. She ran a good race. She is a new face. She is the leader of the party, and if she wants the nomination in 4 years, it's hers. And Susan Happ, same thing, new face, a new presentation to the state of two accomplished politicians who started out without any experience in running a statewide election. I think the Democratic Party going forward with those two leaders plus Tammy Baldwin is in pretty good shape, especially in presidential years.
Do you think the party should do any soul searching about why it does well in presidential years but not in midterms? I mean, now it's a 4-year window, but, well, 3 elections in 4 years, right? 10, recall in 12, and now 14 haven't gone well. What's missing for Democrats in those 3 elections?
Well, this was a very much an election about defeating Scott Walker rather than electing Mary Burke. And I think the Democrats have to think about, well, they already had that election. It was called a recall. However, Mary Burke, I think, was really captured. She had a narrow band of issues to talk about and be in because the base really wanted it to be about defeating Scott Walker. So, yeah, they can soul search all they want until Hillary gets here.
You're already in line for Hillary for 2016?
Yeah, I signed up with Chelsea, too.
You did. Let's talk about Scott Walker as a historical figure. Elected in, he's now had his 3rd election in 4 years. He wins by 52 to 53%. Only governor in Wisconsin, in American history to survive a recall. How do you see him in terms of history, Governor?
Well, I think you got to look at him as being very positive. I mean, anytime you can win 3 elections in the state of Wisconsin, have a recall, and be the only governor to be able to withstand that, you got to be doing something right. Scott Walker is loved by his base. He's not loved so much by the other side. In fact, I would say his borders on really almost the basis of distrust. But the truth of the matter is that when somebody can, no matter how you look at it in politics, if you can motivate a base that's really, so beholden or so much in favor of what you do, and are able to have 48% of the people say everything you do is correct, you got a strong base, and Walker has that. He's got it in spades.
You're dealing with a governor potentially who is the most polarizing in Wisconsin history. So
that's probably true.
Does that argue that he probably will not seek a 3rd term? Do you think, Tommy?
I'm not sure. I
Okay.
mean, it depends upon whether or not he runs for president. It depends upon what happens in the next 4 years.
Should he run for president as someone who did run for president?
If he runs for president, don't do anything I did. Just do it just the opposite, and he'll have a much better chance. But sure, why not? I mean, my biggest mistake was I didn't run for president when I was governor, and was at the top of my game. I waited till I left. I mean, if he's got it in his psychic and he believes that that's the right thing, why shouldn't he run? I mean, people are already talking about him outside the state of Wisconsin. He has an opportunity that few people have, and why not exercise it? Wisconsin's never had a president. I think it would be good for Paul Ryan, both of them to run for president.
Well, I think that if you run for president, then the idea of being bold is difficult. He has one budget to put all of this together, and then it's 2016. It's tough. I mean, Wisconsin is a small state. You have to run on what you have done, not what you didn't do. There are other things. Governor Walker doesn't have a college education. That doesn't hamper in any way a person's ability to govern or their ability to be president, but it will be an issue. When you look at governors from smaller states that have made it, Carter, Clinton, Howard Dean almost made it. He was from Vermont.
What do you mean? He made it to Iowa.
Well, he almost
got destroyed in Iowa.
He almost made it out of Iowa, but then there was that one night.
Yeah.
But it's tough from a small state, And Carter and Clinton really had a story. I think it's much tougher for Paul Ryan. I mean, a member of a House is almost impossible to be elected president or get the nomination. I mean, name one.
Well, with Governor Walker, I mean, his signature achievement was breaking the public employee unions, right? And it'll be 4 years ago that happened, and come February. If we're talking about Iowa in January of 16, it'll be 5 years ago. What does he have to offer compared to a Perry or a Christie? I mean, Rick Perry,
or
the jobs numbers for Texas versus Iowa aren't really in the same ballpark. So what does Governor Walker offer to the base in an Iowa caucus?
That's why he has this budget. He's got a budget, you know, that he's going to present. And I disagree with my good friend Tom, which is not the first time we've disagreed, even though we're still friends. The truth of the matter is, I think he's got to be bold. He's got one budget. He's got to put everything, you know, that he's talked about and believes that he can get done. If he's going to run for president, he's got to be bold and put it in this budget and be able to make the compromises necessary and hopefully get it through as soon as possible. So he's got the budget behind him, and then he can start campaigning for president in Iowa.
And the legislative leaders have to cut him some slack.
Yeah,
they can't
they
be throwing things on his desk that are you know, a right-wing dream that he has to veto or accept. They have an obligation to him to make sure that he can be governor and get some policies out there. He needs some cover, in my opinion, whether it's going to be a Medicaid expansion. Let's take that. Okay. Fills a big budget hole. He has said, I don't want to expand Medicaid because the federal government won't be there in the future to pay for it. Now we have a Republican Congress. We have a Senate Majority Leader from Kentucky. Kentucky was the first to expand Medicaid. Their uninsured rate has plummeted. The guarantee is there that that Medicaid money will be there in the future because of Mitch McConnell and the Congress. I think that the governor has the option, the alacrity, and I think it would be bold if he said, things have changed. We can expand Medicaid now.
Former Health and Human Services Secretary, do you see the governor reversing field and taking the federal money to expand MA, Governor?
I don't think Scott's going to do that, but, you know, it's...
Should he?
I'm not governor. I would, you know,
if he asked you.
If he asked me, I would say, let the legislature do it. This is one of the things Tom's talking about. I mean, you're the governor. You don't have to initiate it. You can have the legislature put it in and say, you know, I signed it.
When Clinton was promised that he wouldn't run for president and he was going to serve that whole term, then he, of course, did run for president. One of the things that legislature did was pass everything he wanted or needed early, and then said, "Well, things have changed. The governor is freer now," and he played that to a fairly well. And the legislature has a role.
His cover.
Yes, it was his cover. It was absolutely his cover.
His cover, and that's why. You know, if you need the budget, and the Joint Finance Committee says I need $200 million, $150 million, you know, this is one way to fill it.
I want to ask your point about cover from legislative leaders, because we're looking at, barring a couple of recounts, the biggest majority for Republicans in the Assembly since 1957 and 19 seats in the Senate. People coming are more conservative, the ones they've replaced. Do you think you can hold back a passionate group of people who want to leave their imprint, if you will, in the legislature? I mean, with your experience with leading a caucus?
Yeah, because when you came to the Assembly in 1977, you guys had 63, so you're pretty close, or 66, pretty close to the 63.
Well, all of the good things Governor Thompson accomplished were accomplished with a Democratic legislature.
Very true.
And I think that Governor Walker has to worry about Tony Earl's experience, where the legislature did put things on his desk. Now, he asked for them, but perhaps in retrospect, you know, it wasn't the greatest thing. And that record created Governor Thompson. I mean, it was clear that what Governor Earl had signed into law, those were the issues. And perhaps not so much should have been sent to his desk. But those are essentially good policies, and Governor Earl said good policy is good politics, and you know, Governor Thompson supported quite a few of those things over the years.
One reason I'm glad both of you agreed to join us is you ran for governor against each other in 1990. So can you talk about the sea changes, the biggest changes, 1990 campaign for governor versus 2014? Just an overview. Do you recognize races for governor anymore, Governor?
Oh, sure, you recognize the race for governors, but I mean, they're so dissimilar to what Tom and I went through. We ran our own campaigns. Right now, it's this cadre of professionals that are imported for elections. The money that comes in from all sides, and it's on the right, it's on the left, and
you're talking about third-party spending.
About third-party spending.
The candidate loses control of his or her campaign?
Well, they lose control because you can't stop it. You know, they can put anything they want on the television or in the papers, and it's played. And candidates, you know, sometimes are benefited by them, sometimes are hurt by it. But the truth of the matter is, when Tom and I ran, you know, I think the two of us together had a total budget of $6 million for governor, and they spent that in 1 week before the election. And we, you know, we had constraints, and we had to do more of the campaigning ourselves. We had to go out and talk to the people, which I've always thought was very much a plus. And you don't have that anymore. You have the outside money, the outside experts, the outside influences, and you have a much more partisan electorate than we've ever had before. When Tom and I ran, you know, I could convince Democrats to vote for me. He could convince Republicans to vote for him. And luckily,
convince many of them.
Not enough, but the possibility was there. Right now, it's pretty much straight line party voting, and that was not the case in Wisconsin.
Tom,
true,
differences?
and as the governor said, we could also, when running our own campaign, set our agenda. We could say these are the issues, and this is how we stand. Now, a third-party group with $1 billion or something to throw into the race, well, it's their issues that get on television. One of the changes, in addition to the amount of money, is the billionaires laying around this country that are willing to write checks for this money. On
both sides.
On both sides. I don't recall that we knew that many billionaires.
I've always said you can never have enough billionaires as friends. I didn't have any. But
I didn't have any either, but should I find one?
Should there be a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, Tom? Because it's brought in too much money, no limits? There are no limits anymore?
You mean the U.S. constitutional amendment? Well,
yes.
I think that's not going to happen, but the Congress can do things that ameliorate it a bit. But we're stuck with it for a while. We're really stuck.
Yeah.
In 1990 in Milwaukee County, correct me, Governor, you carried Milwaukee County.
I did.
128,000.
I also carried Dane County, not that year, but 4 years later.
No, you were 11,000 in 1990, behind in Dane County.
Okay.
Now, Democratic candidates for governor need 33 to 35% of their statewide totals from Milwaukee and Dane. What has happened there?
It's more partisan. I mean, people, the counties around Milwaukee County are more red. The counties in Milwaukee and Dane County are more blue. And that's where the votes are. And you go where the votes are. It's, you know, a Democrat doesn't go to central Wisconsin or the Fox Valley for votes. They go to Madison and Milwaukee and real urban areas. And Republicans go to more rural areas in the Fox Valley. You know, that's the recipe to win in the state of Wisconsin. You got to do that, and that's where the votes are.
No, there was a formula. It's the same formula, even in presidential races. I was the chairman of the Mondale campaign, the Dukakis campaign, and the Clinton campaign in the primaries in Wisconsin, and in the governor's race. And now there's only a limited number of counties to go to, and there are only a few that actually swing. Now, and so you have to concentrate in those counties. Brown, it used to be Racine, maybe. Western Wisconsin seems to have changed the most dramatically because of the influence of the Twin Cities, and you have a lot of people. We don't have much you know, we're 38th in the country in population growth in this state. We have some tough problems, and the job growth is very segmented into 3 small areas of the state. I think Governor Walker it's a tough task to grow this economy. It's a tough one.
I want to ask you guys about the Fox Valley. So I was looking at some numbers today, comparing 2012 presidential numbers to yesterday. In 2012, Romney won Brown County by 2,300 votes. Scott Walker won it by 17,600 with 28,000 fewer votes cast. Winnebago County, Obama won it by 3,300, Walker by 7,600. Again, 19,000 fewer votes cast. What is happening in the Fox Valley that Republicans do so well, or is it Scott Walker that does so well in an off year versus Democrats being able to hold serve in a presidential year?
Well, that's where the Republican votes are. That's the base are. I'm sure that he won by that margin, but I would presume that those 17,000 that he won by are still voting Republican pretty much every year. Republicans vote more consistently than Democrats do in the larger areas.
So it's just Democratic drop-off then that's hurting Democrats in the Fox Valley?
The Democrats are more of a presidential party at the moment. Yeah, definitely.
There's a drop-off. In the 2012, there was a drop-off from the U.S. Senate and the President's vote to the Assembly and Senate by 650,000 votes. And if they would have voted all the way down, the Democrats would have taken over both the Senate and the Assembly 2 years ago.
Can Democrats fix that problem? Have been off-year elections?
No. The elections the districts are so gerrymandered that it's not going to happen.
What about statewide races, though? Do you think you guys can turn that around?
In a presidential year, sure.
But not in midterms?
Well, midterms, not in these legislative districts as they're drawn, but as far as a midterm where there's a governor's race and let's say Mary Burke runs again, absolutely. I mean, we have traded between the two parties governorships for quite a long time. I mean, we just had Jim Doyle. Before that, we had who was it? Governor Thompson.
Then McCallum.
For a long time.
For a long time, and before that was Governor Earl.
Was never governed better.
Yes, you enjoyed the Clinton economy, to a fairly well.
I think I made the Clinton economy, for God's sake.
Yeah, I think so too. You gave him that welfare idea, didn't you?
Yeah, he stole my welfare and never gave me attribution.
But I gave it to you.
You helped me.
Okay.
You helped me.
You guys both came up through the legislature. You were minority leader for a long time. You Assembly as well.
All I ever wanted was Speaker, but he wouldn't let me have it.
Yeah, so he had to run.
Where does the Democratic candidates come from? Do they come from the legislature going forward? Do you think you need something from the private sector? Where's the bench for Democrats in Wisconsin going forward?
Well, I think I think that Tammy Baldwin and Mary Burke and Ms. Happ are the bench and are the future. I don't see it coming from the legislature or the members of the House, the Congress. I think if Ron Kine wanted to run for governor, he should have done it, or he should stop dancing around and say he might do it in the future. So, and we have Russ Feingold, who I'm convinced will run against Senator Johnson, and I think that will be a close race. He's a very good candidate. So we do have the future. We have 4 great people.
Governor, the Speaker mentioned reapportionment. Is it time for Wisconsin to consider the Iowa model, where a nonpartisan group draws up lines that are either ratified or denied by the ledge?
Steve, I'd like to see a better process. I mean, there's no question. When Tom and the Democrats controlled, and Tom mentions reapportionment now, but when he was in charge, he was as partisan, and he drew the lines for his benefit. And I don't take that away from him. I don't take it away from the Republicans. I would like to see the parties come together and put some guidelines that they have to use, and maybe a modified Iowa plan, but it's done by the legislature, and before it gets to that, 2 years before or 4 years before, they set down some guidelines that they have to follow, principles that are going to make it much easier to have competitive races. Because right now, if you have a real partisan district, a Republican doesn't have to listen to a Democrat, and a Democrat area doesn't have to listen to a Republican, and I don't think that's good for democracy.
Have we come to a point where lawmakers pick their voters instead of the other way around in Wisconsin, Governor?
Well, I think to a certain degree, yes. And that's why I'm saying if you set principles down that had to be signed off on a bipartisan coalition and commission, and then reapportion, redistribute based upon those principles, I think you could develop some competitive districts.
I mean,
And
that could be a way forward. I really agree with the governor, being realistic as to what could possibly happen. And when you look at Iowa, Arizona, New Jersey, they do have a set of principles that the reapportionment commission has to look at. Now, Arizona, for example, that was put in by a referendum, and that was right in the ballot. I think the governor has a very good idea on the way forward. Maybe an advisory referendum to say let's do something different. But it's a tough one. It can be a cancer on the democracy that you have the whole country gerrymandered in such a way that there's hardly a chance to change the incumbent or change the party.
You mentioned cancer on the whole country. Is it a cancer in the state of Wisconsin now, Mr. Speaker, the way reapportionment is done?
I think it's tough in Wisconsin with the congressional seats, first of all. I mean, we have lost population, and then we are losing population relatively. So our House districts are smaller, fewer people. I can see probably maybe losing a seat in the future. If they were more competitive, but of course they're drawn by the legislature. I think the legislature, the population shifts and growths within districts have some effect on a district over a 10-year period. When the Democrats took control, what was it, 1969? They're somewhere around there after a long Republican dynasty. The districts were out of whack, but the population changed dramatically. But I guess I agree with the governor that if we could agree on a set of principles in some way and try to get the legislature to focus on that, that would be good.
You mentioned referendums. While we were getting ready for the show, did you vote against the lockbox on the transportation fund?
I did. If I could have voted 10 times, I'd have voted against it 10 times.
Did you vote 10 times? I assume you only voted once.
Well,
Fraud's
no.
been debated here. So.
I have a question. His voting ethics.
Okay, but why?
Two reasons. One, I think very much a failure of legislative leaders, A, giving away institutional power by putting this in the Constitution. Second, the governor's hands are tied one more way because the governor doesn't get any say in the constitutional amendment process. They probably have locked in a deficit in the transportation fund that will have to be propped up by borrowing, the interest of which will be paid by the general fund. I think it was bad all the way around, but I do feel bad about the legislature. This legislature as an institution, one of the weakest in the country, and what do? Give away some little power that they have in this area.
Is that the power of the road builders? I mean, I don't hear many people talk about building fewer roads. I've heard talk about we have a funding problem, we have this, but nobody says build fewer roads. So the road builders were that influential, do you think? Is that why this happened?
Well, if it is, it's a sad day. Because you shouldn't change the Constitution because the interest group du jour is on board.
Well, you're a guy that put through 2020, the 2020 plan.
Yeah,
It led to 4 lanes.
And it's still the framework for road construction in the state of Wisconsin today.
How do you feel about that referendum vote yesterday? What did pass? The Constitution is amended.
Well, you got to realize that 80% of the people in the state of Wisconsin voted for it. I mean, it wasn't a 2/3 or 3/4. It was 80% of the people voted for it. And so I agree with Tom to a certain degree that the legislature, it shouldn't have gotten to this far. But there were shenanigans played with the road building fund under a former governor, and as a result of that, they had to take some action. I would much rather have had the legislature and the governor stand up and say, we're not going to do this. We're going to pass legislation to prevent it. But constitutional amendments, I'm I'm very concerned about it. But when 80% of the people in the state of Wisconsin vote for it, you got to say, you know, this is representative government, and the people have spoken, and it's pretty obvious to me that the people do not want the money that goes in the transportation fund used for anything else than roads, and that's a pretty
Well, the
good sign.
problem with that is that now general fund money will have to be used to
True.
prop out the transportation fund.
And
so
the last-
I mean, it's
the last two
a
budgets has
zero-sum
diverted-
game.
has
Yes,
diverted
yes.
some
I mean, if
GPR
you look
money.
at what is it, the last 8 years, it's even as far as what came in and what came out.
Well, you two are put in a room to fix the transportation fund. Do you raise a gas tax? Do you do a miles driven tax? Do you try to ask for tolls? Like, what do you do to fix the shortfall if you need $650 million to meet current commitments?
2015, 2017,
They never should have taken away the indexing.
2006, has it been? Our indexing was frozen in 2006, has not been increased. The $75 we pay for our vehicle
Yeah.
to register, that hasn't gone up since 2008.
And most states are much higher than that.
I think the two of us could come to an agreement pretty fast. I mean, the governor is very much a transportation person. I remember a phone call with him when he wanted to take the Secretary of Transportation in Washington, and I said, "Don't do it. Health is where the action is."
You wanted transportation.
I wanted transportation, sure.
But it's tough to base something on consumption of gallons of gasoline in an era where cars are going to get better mileage by federal law. You have much of the rest of the country going to some type of light rail interurban transit, including red states. Phoenix has an amazing light rail system. California is going through a period of having charging stations throughout the state for electric cars. Nevada is going to be the source for Tesla batteries. There's big bets out there on alternate transportation that Wisconsin has to at least acknowledge and lay some groundwork for the future. And the Democrats want that train back too.
Former chair of the Amtrak board, that's you, right?
Yes.
Would you have rejected the $800 million to build that train from Milwaukee to Madison, Governor?
Well, I think that's yesterday's news. You know, it was, you know, there's no question I supported that, but, you know, I was not governor at the time. Governor Walker campaigned on that, and he got elected, and he followed through. I would just like to point out, I noticed that former Majority Leader Senator Tim Cullen just came in the room, and I would dare to say that Speaker Loftus, Majority Leader Tim Cullen, and myself could sit down this afternoon over a hamburger and a Coke and maybe a cup of coffee, and Tom Loftus would want a beer, and we would be able to come up with a fix to the transportation fund by 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Could you sell a gas tax increase, do you think, in the current climate?
I'm sure if we'd go that one, but I'm thinking if the three of us sat down and had the Democrats and Republicans support, I think we could come up with a very comprehensive plan that would fix the highway transportation.
Okay, so when Majority Leader Cullen and I were in charge and had to pass something, we put indexing in because then the legislature wouldn't have to vote on increasing the gas tax, and the governor signed it. Now, you can go back to that. I mean, it's not going to be that big an impact because inflation is quite low, but it would have got you a nickel since when was it?
2006.
It would have got you a nickel. That's a lot of money.
And our gas tax is 30.9% if you discount the 2 cents for PECFA. I want to go back to President, and just a simple question. Isn't Paul Ryan better positioned to run for president than Governor Walker?
I think at this point in time, Paul Ryan is a very credible candidate, and I think that he's got some pluses that no other candidate on the Republican side has, namely running for vice president and being across America and having the support of Romney behind him. But people in this country, I think, are going to be looking at chief executives. I think they feel that Obama has not led, and they want somebody with experience. They don't want to put somebody in that doesn't have executive experience again. And so I think governors are going to be looked at very, very diligently by the people. and looking for somebody that can lead. And that's what, I think that was the vote yesterday. They felt that the president hasn't led, they don't believe the government is working, and they're going to look for a chief executive that has experience.
Well, I think that Governor Walker should run for president if he is all inclined to do so. And I think that he shouldn't foreclose the option.
Right.
One way to foreclose it is to do a budget that really messes things up. I think he has some luxury now to travel. The poor man hasn't been able to be out of the country and out of the state much. No. And for Governor Thompson, I mean, we traveled all the time to foreign countries to advance Wisconsin interests, but we really learn from those travels what the big bad world is like. I would like Governor Walker to go to Beijing, Berlin, and Istanbul, and I think that he would learn so much. Of course, you're promoting Wisconsin, but tough thing about running for president, the first question you're asked could be the last one. Yeah. It's tough out there.
Why are you 2 years out already endorsed Hillary Clinton, Tom?
Well, I have been with the Clintons since day one. When I was Speaker and Bill Clinton was governor of Arkansas, we met and became friends over issues dealing with, in Arkansas, children's health, teacher pay, and it was quite an accomplishment what he did in Arkansas that gave him the platform to run for president. He had quite a good record. Well, Hillary is a dear friend of mine. I think she is the candidate that the Democrats can unite behind, and I think she would be a great president.
What concerns do you have about a President Hillary Clinton, Governor?
Well, you know, the Clintons happen to be my friends too. So Bill Clinton was my mentor when I first got elected governor, and so they appoint a seasoned governor, and they don't look on D's and R's, and I was assigned to Bill Clinton. So Bill Clinton has always been somebody that I could call and talk to, and I gotta say he's a friend. So I just don't think Hillary is right now, after Obama, is the right person to put in as president. Not that I don't think she's competent. Don't think that that she is. I agree with Tom. I think she's definitely going to get the nomination. But I just think that it's time for a Republican president.
And who's on your short list? Who's on your short list as your party's candidate for president?
Well, I mean, you got to take a look at. You know, I'm so Wisconsin-centric. You got to look at Scott Walker and Paul Ryan. One of those individuals is going to run. I'm going to support our hometown team and do everything I possibly can. If they don't run, I'll be with Jeb Bush.
Do you have concerns that Republicans aren't dealing with the demographic issues that they face? We've talked a lot about immigration reform in this country the last few years.
I think you're going to see that they are going to address that. I think. You know, you haven't asked this question, but I want to put it out on the table. I think the next 2 years in the United States is going to be some of the most productive years we've seen in Washington for a long time. President Clinton, President Obama does not want to go out of office without accomplishing more than the Obama Act, the Affordable Care Act. And he's going to have a press conference afterwards. Don't know what he's going to say. He's going to invite people in already. He made that announcement before the polls were even closed yesterday. He read the tea leaves. He knew he was going to be rejected. And so he's going to want to sit down with the leadership of the Republicans, as well as the Democrats, and try and come up with an agenda and get it passed in the next 2 years. Republicans now are elected. They've got to govern, and they've got to do something. And immigration is just one of them. Mm-hmm. The pipeline is another one. The international trade agreements, energy, education, all of these are out there. And they're ready to be plucked. Now, you don't have to be too bright to realize, you know, one of the things the Republicans got to show that they can govern. One of the things President Obama's got to do is he's got to be able to become moderate. And he's got to move to the center, just like Clinton did. And I think, you know, you didn't ask the question, but I think the next 2 years are going to be extremely productive on a bipartisan basis in Washington with Republicans passing legislation and that the president is going to sign or be involved in a lot of that legislation.
Well, I think that I agree with Governor Thompson, and there's also several areas in foreign affairs where there could be progress. If there is a deal with Iran on stopping the march toward obtaining a nuclear weapon, we now have a Senate controlled by Republicans, and there is a great opportunity and responsibility. We have on the table a European Union-U.S. Free Trade Pact, and we have an Asian Free Trade Pact on the table that excludes China, but it is an important thing going forward. And I think a Republican Senate, which is the key player in all of these, given the fact that their majority and perhaps the Tea Party didn't win as much as there's some opportunity here for the president.
Nixon went to China. Republicans are going to do something with their immigration.
The warning from,
Trust me.
The warning from scientists worldwide this week on climate change. Do you see action on that? How serious a threat is climate change? You two are veterans of these issues.
I lived 5 years in Norway. I've been to the Arctic so many times that I'm a member of the Polar Bear Club on an island between the north of Norway and the North Pole, and that was the mid-90s. I have been back several times, and my God, you can just witness the dramatic change that's going on, not just in the sea ice in the Arctic, but what is going on in the littoral in Norway and the north of Russia. The permafrost is leaving, let alone Alaska, which is also changing dramatically. Can this Congress and this president do something? I don't know.
I'm not sure.
I'm
not sure that that's going to make the top 10 list. I think
it's all about coal politics in this country.
I mean, there's issues that need to be addressed. Not that energy and climate change shouldn't be. I mean, and I'm not taking a position that it shouldn't be addressed. It should be. But the truth of the matter is that's harder to come to an agreement on that issue than it is the pipeline, the trade agreements, you know, the tax reform, bringing the $2 trillion offshore back home. There's ways, you know, things that are much more, immigration, much more at the head of the list than climate change. And that's why it's going to be much more difficult.
What's the benefit for the state of Wisconsin with the GOP taking control of Congress? Will there be specific benefits? You just predicted a very productive 2 years. What of that, if any, will help Wisconsin?
Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. I mean, here is going back to Mel Laird and
David Obey.
David Obey, and who was the Republican, Davis, Congressman Davis. You know, we haven't had this kind of power in Wisconsin for a long time. And Dave Obey, of course, was chairman of the Appropriations Committee. But the truth of the matter is Paul Ryan, former candidate for vice president, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, is a political wonk, a policy wonk. He wants to get things done. He's going to advance legislation in a lot of these areas, and he's going to have the support of the House. They're going to pass it. The Senate's going to pass it. They're going to have a budget, and I think the president is going to sign. You know, not everything, but I think there's going to be some give and take with the Congress and the White House, and I think the fact that Paul Ryan is the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee is going to benefit the state of Wisconsin tremendously.
But in the current environment we live in, you know, earmarks have gone away. Are there things in Wisconsin specific that Ryan could do?
Earmarks have never gone away. I mean, they're just different ways that they're, you know.
But you know what I mean?
I mean, there's money set aside for this particular program. It's not an earmark, but you know darn good and well where it's going to go.
I would just change the subject. Back to being bold. The University of Wisconsin system really needs some bold action from the governor. It needs to be funded over a long period of time in a way that addresses student needs, student debt, and faculty pay. If we could get a funding formula that rewarded the university on graduation rates, in other words, something you can measure, and get a handle on student debt. I am all in favor of this tuition freeze, but only because it gives us time to breathe. When I was the speaker and the governor was the minority leader, we set up a commission on the future of the University of Wisconsin system under much pressure from throughout the state. We went around the state, we came up with a set of policies. It was passed, enacted into law. It set the funding formula, the stage for the university system for 20 years. If Governor Walker could do something to help the University of Wisconsin system prosper, I'm not saying just money, just certainty about the future.
Quick follow-up. More is being demanded of our technical colleges than ever before, Tom. You know that. Do you also support the tuition freeze on the tech colleges that the governor has recommended?
No. I think that's a different, you have a tuition freeze. The technical colleges are different in their funding source, different in their mission, although the Madison Area Technical College is the #1 source of transfer students to UW-Madison. It has become an amazing institution. I think the technical colleges have to.
I think we passed it when we were in.
Right, we did. Pretty much everything good that ever happened.
It came in that window?
It came in that window. It was a long period.
That's a little bit ago.
But I think the technical colleges have a great role to play in training people for future jobs. But you can't tell them, these are the future jobs, train them for this. It's dictating
Your
something.
thoughts on both the UW system and the tech colleges?
Well, the university system and the vocational system, are jewels. These are institutions that we got to take care of and preserve. But Tom is putting it on Scott Walker's shoulder. I think when we did our round, it was the legislature. You and I did. You and I did all the framework. You and I and Tom Loftus and I went around and visited all the campuses. And Tom said before, and I agreed with him. We went around and we gave each other, we gave our speeches so often that we decided that when we got to Superior, I would give Tom Loftus a speech and he'd give my speech.
And he has never been more articulated when I gave that speech.
And so, yes, we need to do something, but I just don't think, you can't point on Scott Walker. Scott Walker has been very beneficial on freezing tuition, and he has also been extremely a leader in tech schools. And I think you're going to see in this budget, I don't know what's in the budget, and I don't know where the governor is going to come, but I'm here to tell you, I think that there's going to be a very dynamic vocational tech school initiative in order for creating jobs in Wisconsin. Anyway, I hope there is.
Okay, I'll agree. I agree. I mean, whether the initiative comes from the governor or the legislature, it's needed.
Yeah.
And the legislature, the politics and the dynamics are a little easier to handle.
Especially
something that affects the whole system.
Well, I've been up here for 14, almost 15 years, which I know is a spec for the three of you guys. But the whole time I've been here, there's been this tension between, especially Republicans and the UW system administrators. It came to a head last year with the slush fund, or whatever you want to call it. Has UW system regained the trust of lawmakers, particularly Republicans? And if not, what do they have to do to fix that problem going forward?
All I can tell you is that I'm hearing great things about Ray Cross. That President Cross has come up and spent a lot of time, and that's what legislators need. Legislators got to feel important. They run for these offices, and they expect that they have some people come up and say nice things about them. Or I was going to say something else, but I won't. and so I think Ray Cross recognizes that, and he's done it. I don't know President Cross. I guess I've met him, but I don't know him. But I think he's doing a good job of healing that wound.
Well, right. When I was on the Regents, Ray Cross was the chancellor of Extension and Colleges, the two-year system. And one of the main reasons why he was elevated was because of his record there. Now, this initiative should also come from the UW administration, but the Board of Regents have a role to play, but as the governor will tell you, once a governor appoints a regent, that's the last time you hear from that person.
I used to tell people, I appoint somebody to the Board of Regents. They walk down State Street, and all of a sudden, there's a cloud that comes down off of Bascom Hill, and they ascend to the upper offices of Bascom Hill, never to be seen again until their appointment is out. Then they'll say, "Governor, you remember me?" I said, "No, I don't."
Let's go to the election for Attorney General. Just a few weeks out, 60, what was it, 70%? More than 60%.
74, yeah.
Didn't have enough information on either candidate, right, JR?
Yes.
Why did Brad Schimmel win? Were there Walker coattails? Explain how.
He got more votes than Walker.
I understand that, but why?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious. Law enforcement is very much a local situation, and Schimmel had 2/3 of the district attorneys and the sheriffs, both political parties, supporting him, and everybody in the county knows their sheriff and district attorney, or knows their sheriff. Hopefully, they don't know their district attorney as well as they know their sheriff, but they depend a lot. Sheriffs have a tremendous sway over the electorate in a particular county, and it's always been that way, and it's going to be that way because they're the ones that are closest to the people, and they supported Schimmel, and I think that carried through, and that's why Schimmel, I think, really did as well as he did.
It's obvious the Democrats did not choose the other Democrats running in the primary. They chose a newcomer, a woman, someone who was a new face, and I think that regardless of how she performed in this election, I think that did the Democratic Party very well for the future, that she ran and got the nomination.
What would you advise, Mary Burke, you've just said, and Susan Happ, future leaders of the party?
And yes, Tammy Baldwin.
And Tammy in office?
Yes.
How would you advise Ms. Burke and Ms. Happ to stay relevant and part of the political debate in terms of getting elected in the future, Tom?
Well, it's just hard work. You have to go around the state. They've got a lot of IOUs out, and they have to repay them, and they have to campaign for other people. I think Mary Burke should take some time and write a book that she can articulate her life, her story, what she believes in, and what she thinks are the policies to go ahead. Not detailed stuff, but it's important. She has some luxury here. I think Tammy Baldwin has turned out to be one of the great senators, and there's a great deal of enthusiasm about Russ Feingold running again. I can't say enough about Mary Burke. Okay, a couple of problems in the campaign. That comes from inexperience of never running before. So I think the Democrats are in good shape with her.
How would you have advised her to handle both the plagiarism debate and the debate over the circumstances under which she left Trek in 1993, Tom?
Well, given the fact that I stole any idea that I could around the country, I didn't see that was a big deal. But I think on that one, she could have just ignored the question and said, "Listen, this was a mistake. The person is gone. I support these policies, regardless of where they came from." I think on the other one, Trek is a private company, and I think she could have said, "Well, listen, this is a private company, and this is how business works, and I was a great success in my role." When she went to Europe to introduce Trek, the Italian bicycle manufacturers owned the racing market, and Trek broke into it. And the other thing I'll tell you, I went on a trade mission with her and Governor Doyle to Japan and China. I observed how she interacted with business leaders in a foreign country, and it's tough. Those are the two toughest countries on earth for a woman to be interacting with other business leaders, and she was very businesslike and effective for the state.
Did the Walker campaign lashing Mary Burke to Governor Doyle hurt her campaign, Tom? And if so, how much?
Well, I assume it hurt her campaign, but otherwise they wouldn't have done it. There must have been some polling that would suggest that would be a way to go. But I also think the Republicans' dislike of Jim Doyle was so much that they were willing to spend a lot of money on sort of a vanity exercise of putting him in commercials and things like that.
Your thoughts on Mary Burke playing defense, on plagiarism, the circumstances under which she left track, and being lashed at former Governor Doyle?
Well, I mean, that's a Democratic problem. So I'm not sure I should be passing Republican advice to Mary Burke. I think Mary Burke was a very good candidate. I think Scott Walker said that in his speech last night. I don't know Mary. I met her at a football game, shook hands with her. I was impressed by the campaign she ran. If it would have been me, when it came up about Trek, I said, well, talk to my brother. He's the CEO. I would have brought John Burkhauser. Ask him anything you want. And I'll leave the room. You ask John Burke about how I did and what I did, and let John Burke, who's the CEO, answer the questions.
Does whatever Governor Walker recommends, policy initiatives in his next budget, is there any doubt in your mind all of that gets passed, given the potential 63-36 in the Assembly, 19-14 in the Senate? Is he going to get whatever he wants?
My worst year as a speaker is when we had 60-some votes. I mean, everybody wanted everything, and they didn't want to vote in the end for what was needed to pass. They thought someone else could. The best time was when we had 51 votes, and they all went in with a mentality, I can't excuse myself, I have to vote for this. So the legislature could be his Achilles heel if they put things on his desk that he might have to sign because they're play to the base or something like that, but they wouldn't help him or the state.
Would you rather have your party in control of both houses, Governor?
Oh, of course. I mean, any governor would want that.
I understand that. But what are the potential problems of that?
Out of the 14 years, I only had my party in control of both houses 18 months, less than 2 years. And I've always had to deal with the Democrats. And some of my best legislative sessions were when I had to deal with Speaker Loftus and Democrats in control of the state Senate. But saying that, sometimes a luxury of having that many votes causes a lot of internal problems. And because everybody wants something. They all ran, and now they're here. And they all think, you know, that they're sort of special, and they are. I mean, I'm not saying that, but they are. They have an ego, or they wouldn't run, and they want to be able to get things done, and that causes friction. I'm hopeful if Scott Walker is serious, and I think he is, about running for president. What he would do is he would meet with the leadership very soon and say, this is the parameters under which I'm going to govern, and I need your help, and we want to pass a budget. And these are the things that I need to get done. This is my agenda. This is my vision. This is what I ran on. And I want you to buy into it. I think he needs that kind of a discussion before the session starts, right after the reorganization, and sit down and say, this is what we're going to do. We're Republicans. We're in control. They put us here. This is my agenda. I need you to buy in.
And pass it on time.
JR, we're almost out of time. I want to be sure you get in your final question.
Do you think right to work ends up on Walker's desk, and is it good or bad if it does?
I don't know. I don't think it does, just because I don't think, I just don't think that Walker wants it to.
Yeah, I don't think that there's an appetite in the legislature even for that. I mean, no need to go through that again.
You started Choice in the city of Milwaukee.
Yes.
It's now grown to the scene, 1,000 slots statewide. Mm-hmm. Speaker Voss would like that cap removed, that 1,000 cap removed. Would that be wise policy, Governor? I don't think there's any choice schools in Elroy, Wisconsin.
No, and there won't be. I would like to see it work, and I'm not sure that right now that's an issue that Scott Walker needs to pass. I think that the choice system, I think, works, but I think we've done enough right now.
Well, okay, so when the governor signed that, of course, the Democratic legislature passed it for him to sign, and it was focused on doing something for the people of Milwaukee who were in such dire straits as far as their educational opportunities. It was focused on a basic thing that the Democrats and Republicans agreed on. To expand it any more than it is, we can see in Philadelphia how the public school system has been ruined because of this. The one Republican to lose, the governor of Pennsylvania, Corbett, and there was
that wasn't over choice. That was
no,
but
University
of Pennsylvania.
There was quite a few things, but another thing. Yeah. So I hope it doesn't. We need an educational policy and educational funding, and many times in the legislature, these are tangential things that consume the leaders, and you can't move the members to where they need to be.
Let's wrap the show up this way. What one thing are you going to watch occurring in this Capitol in the next year? Just one thing that's going to be most interesting. Tom, you want to go first?
Well, I'm going to watch the Speaker. He is a friend of mine. He was the first student regent. We have had discussions. I think he has a role to play that he's not playing now. He has to be a leader to get things done and do exactly what the governor said. These are the parameters. This is what we're going to pass. It's going to go on the governor's desk. We're going to do it on time. I don't care what your dreams are. This is the plan.
Governor?
I want to see the Walker agenda. And I want him to sit down with the leadership, work out the parameters, and get that agenda done and get it done passed quickly. It's to Walker's advantage to pass his budget, get it in, get it passed, and get it done quickly.
Gentlemen, this has been a fascinating discussion. I want to thank former Governor Tommy Thompson, former Speaker Tom Loftus, and my co-host, J.R. Ross. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.